Warning viewer, this contains spoilers for the R.L. Stine novel Creature Teacher. Beware viewer, you are in for a scare. I have recently been revisiting one of my childhood cornerstones, Goosebumps. I used to collect and read them like crazy when I was in my tweens. I stopped reading them when I was in my mid-teens, and it's only until recently that I've gotten back into them. It's my intention to reread past favorites, see how I interpret them through an adult lens. The number one thing I've noticed is that these books are such keen explorations of dysphoria within children. From feeling other to your peers, feeling lost and not knowing what to do, discovering who you are, fear of a monster coming to get you, or worse, get the ones you love. We also see domestic family melodrama in a lot of these books. Slappy's Nightmare is a prime example of how the supernatural can tear families apart and ruin the love shared in a household. Many, such as the wonderful podcast Say Podcast and Die, have cited trans and queer subtext in various books. There's a lot to infer from these stories, regardless of R.L. Stine's intentions. These books follow emotional stories through a childish lens, and I find that very valuable. Children's experiences are just as valid as adults. Stine believes this with the utmost sincerity. A book that exemplifies a lot of these thematic explorations is the 1998 book Creature Teacher. It's a story I never read as a kid, but reading it as an adult, I wish I did back in the day. This can be attributed to the fact that this book was a part of the Series 2000. I didn't know they existed until late in the game, so I supposed I was too late. But it's also a doggone shame, because not only does this book have an irresistible cartoonish spooky vibe, but this book speaks to my school experience at almost scary levels. Creature Teacher follows our protagonist, Paul Perez, who gets sent away to a boarding school called the Caring Academy. There's also a cruel irony to that name, which you'll understand in a minute. He gets sent for being a troublemaker, a unique soul that the system wants to control, a funny, jovial person in a sea of compliant, depressed individuals. Once he gets to the school, he realizes his teacher is a monster. But there is a catch. Not only is she upfront about who she is, but she has a hierarchy system. She has a chart that ranks the students from top to bottom. Stine in this excerpt explains her system. I squinted at the chart. I saw 20 or 25 rectangular white cards down from the top. A name on each card, the names of everyone in the class. Is it some kind of achievement chart? I wondered. We had one of those in second grade. Everyone got gold or silver stars. Kind of babyish for 6th grade. Paul, do you know what a bottom feeder is? Mrs. Marg, raspy baritone, interrupted my faults. I gulped. Well, in a lake or the ocean, it's a fish that swims along the bottom and eats things. I wiped the sweat off my forehead with the back of my hand. Yes, that's right, Mrs. Marg grinned. It isn't good to be on the bottom, is it, class? Some kids shook their heads. Some muttered, no. If you are on the bottom, you are going to be eaten, Mrs. Marg exclaimed excitedly. I saw Molly grab her forehead as if she had a bad headache. Beside her, Celeste covered her mouth with both hands. Paul, you have come to a school where the students like to be on top, Mrs. Marg continued. As she talked, she tapped the food chain chart with the pointer. And in my class, everybody works really hard to stay on top. She leaned forward, chins bobbing, wet eyes locked on me. Because guess what, Paul? I'm a bottom feeder. That's right! After the talent show, in about 3 weeks, I'm going to check the food chain, I'm going to see who it is at the very bottom, and then I'm going to have a feast. Yes, you heard that right. Mrs. Marg feeds on the bottom feeder, the person who doesn't fit in with the arbitrary expectations of being in school. The only way to stay from the bottom and move up is to have talent, and demonstrate it at the talent show. You can do extra credit, stay in line, but you have to be quiet, don't question anything. It's also worth noting that in the scene prior, Mrs. Marg views her as the highest species and has her students as the lower ones, not the powerful and less powerful. Her ideology is that these structures can't be changed, it is predetermined. Paul thinks this is a joke at first, but then he realizes the seriousness of the situation. In the prologue of the book, it's established that Paul used to believe in the supernatural, to the point that it kept him up at night. With this background, it makes it all the more heartbreaking that his past trauma was founded in reality. He has to reckon with himself. The only way he knows how to cope is to deflect with humor, but it becomes increasingly more difficult when the situation is so dire. He goes to such desperate lengths to stay alive. He quickly races to find talent so he can participate in the talent show. He makes a model of the most complicated molecule. He does this all out of desperation, not genuine passion. It's fear of failure, not an actual inquiry into learning and knowledge. Creature Teacher does such a good job of showing how unrealistic it is to make kids choose a passion when they are still developing and discovering who they are. It makes them hate themselves that they can't have it figured out like everyone else. Paul's dad tells him, eat or be eaten, and that's such a damning thing to tell a kid. This really captured how I felt in school. I have ADHD and I was lagging behind everyone else. I felt like my life was over if I didn't succeed. The book just materializes this angst in a literal way. The book takes the archetypal horror monster and recontextualizes it into an emotional condemnation of the school system. I love that Stein was willing to write a book that reckons with the school system this thoroughly. It's not subtle at all, it is essentially the text. The book frames school as competition, school as a rat race, and it demonstrates how much this affects each of the students' psyches and ethics. School often trivializes its students in order to prepare them for the workforce. It's more so how they will fit into the capitalist machine, rather than making them emotionally intelligent people who have a genuine passion for the things they do or learn. We see this most clearly with Molly Bagby, a girl with black bangs and Paul's friend throughout the book, aka my goth queen. She is near the bottom of the chart, so she must get higher by playing the violin expertly at the talent show. The only problem is her peer Brad Caperton, who possesses the same talent, but only one of them can play the violin at the talent show. By exploiting these students' passion for art into competition and survival, we see these students lose humanity and lose all signs of empathy. This teaches them the wrong reasons to pursue a career, but it doesn't end here. Throughout the book, someone keeps ruining Paul's act. His science project is tarnished, which ruins his chances of moving up the chart. A big twist in this is that Molly has been sabotaging Paul's chances the entire time. The system has driven her to madness so she can save her soul. Yet the book offers her redemption. There is empathy to her plight. She is the victim of circumstance. Paul forgives her because there is solidarity in their situation. This was one of the scenes that made me cry. I was essentially a cross between Paul and Molly, so this felt like my school experience was being acknowledged for how terrifying it was. Stein provides comfort and affirmation for many of our school experiences. It is okay to go through this and the future will be brighter. I can imagine a school kid reading this and feeling like somebody finally hears them. It works for all generations, the ones who have buried their heartache in the past and the ones who are in the thick of it. Before I move on to the last section, there were some other scenes that made me tear up. Paul's scene where his science project is ruined, his emotional reaction is so harrowing. The last one is Brad's scene where he must find a new talent because his violin got tampered with. His desperate pleas while trying to learn card tricks as a last-ditch attempt is really hard to read. I wanted to wrap up my discussion of this book by talking about the concluding events of the story. Paul decides he's had enough and tries to escape, but Molly comes out and tells him to come back to school. Molly has tried to escape before. She says there are invisible barriers at the front of the school. It turns out his parents are there. Mrs. Marg tells them she's been having troubles with Paul and that he should be sent home. Paul tries to tell them that his teacher is a monster and detail the injustice he's been dealing with, but his parents don't believe him. Paul has tried to contact them before. Up to this point, his calls are blocked and all students' mail is sent straight to the trash. Because Paul is a child, he has no power or autonomy. It's easier for his parents to give validity to an authority figure than their own son. This is a symptom of a bigger issue. Kids aren't heard and their perspectives aren't considered. This dampens their creative spirit and can make them more complacent later in life. But all hope is not lost. Paul assumes his own power. Later in the book, Paul is called to do the talent show personally by Mrs. Marg, but it turns out this was just a ruse to get him alone so she could feast on his flesh. Paul is at the bottom because of his attempted escape and failure at other activities. Marv, who is Mrs. Marg's son, who admittedly doesn't like Mother very much either, tells Paul that the only way to defeat her is to make her laugh. This will put her into a slumber for 6 months. It's just funny how the antithesis to Mrs. Marg's personality is her one weakness. She's that detached, she is that joyless. Maybe once upon a time she was in Paul's situation, who knows? Paul uses his ultimate strength to destroy the power that has terrorized him for the entire book. He tickles her and it works. Stein posits that the only way we can win is by using humour. The only way to defeat evil teachers is with creativity or laughter. This is something the school system tends not to have. Stein remains optimistic in the face of terror, but not without a little twist at the end. Will these injustices repeat? Only you, the reader, can decide. As you can tell, I love this book with all my heart. When you take good commentary and couple that with amazing atmosphere, vibe, and a character that goes on an emotional journey, that makes it an automatic winner for me. Didn't even mention how this book is a subversion of the typical Goosebumps book. All the characters know the danger. Other books in the series will characteristically feature a "you gotta believe me" angle. There's not a lot of that, so it allows the horror to build up in a different way. The chapters go on longer, allowing me to really immerse myself and soak up each scene. The book makes me look forward to reading more Goosebumps stories or any other R.L. Stein books. Seeing compassionate stories written about children's plights warms my heart. It's amazing how a lot of these stories hold up and hold more weight as an adult. I would like to say to Stein, thank you for the scares and hope you keep supplying them for many more years to come. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and please tell me what you thought in the comments or what you thought of the book. Yeah, I might do this again with either a film or another Goosebumps book or whatever it is. Yeah, stay breezy and I'll see you in the next one.